Good morning. My name is Logan, and I'm working here with Kendra, Chase, Regine, Malik, and Emma. Today, we are covering religion and how it has been affected by business and how the two are intertwined, religion and capitalism and the struggles between the two different systems, Islamic finance, and how different religions view finance and interact differently than we do here.
To what extent is religion a unifying versus a divisive force for firms? How can firms incorporate religion into their operating and strategic outlook? What does it mean for a firm to be socially responsible with respect to religion? Beyond tolerance, how can a firm respond to its stakeholders' religious needs without shifting its position from issue to issue or seeming to favor one constituency over another? Where people disagree about religion, how can firms respect that diversity to the advantage of all? These are all excellent questions presented in Case Study 1 about religion. According to a study conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau, 3 out of 4 Americans name a Christian faith when asked for their religion preference, as well as 50% who are Protestant or another non-Catholic Christian religion, 24% who are Catholic, and 2% who are Mormon. For non-Christian religions, it came to 2% of people that are Jewish, less than 1% who are Muslim, and 3% as other, leaving 16% of Americans who don't have a religious preference and 3% who chose to not answer the question. Americans say that religion is very important or fairly important to them, and that number has not changed much since 1992. Religion can be a touchy subject to a lot of people, and it can be hard to incorporate it into business. One company that is known for their religious affiliation is the fast food restaurant Chick-fil-A. They have a plaque on display in all their restaurants that says their mission is to glorify God, which they do by only having their restaurants open 6 days a week, being closed on Sunday. Chick-fil-A's founder stated that you don't need to be Christian to work at Chick-fil-A, but the company asks you to base your business on biblical principles because they work. This is a pretty intense statement from a company when most think of religion as a touchy subject. Chick-fil-A's use of strategic CSR has given them a competitive advantage over other fast food competitors. Like the case states, it's ironic that the United States has it defined in the Constitution to separate church and state, but they are known for being overtly religious. Whereas in the UK, the Queen is also the head of the Church of England, but the UK also tends to be more atheist and agnostic. Another example of religion in business is the anecdote the case mentions about British Airways in 2006. One of their employees was suspended for wearing a small crucifix. The company soon became under fire, but they stated it was just part of their uniform policy and that jewelry, including religious symbols, must be concealed underneath the uniform. The end of this case poses an interesting question for discussion about the role of religion in my own personal life. I think I have a relationship with religion similar to a lot of people. My family and I went to church a lot when I was younger, but we slowly stopped going as we got older and things got busier. The only time we say grace is when Grandma and Grandpa come to visit. The only time we pray is when we're in desperate need. It's an interesting concept about picking and choosing when to think about and utilize religion. The second part of the discussion question asks whether or not the society in which we live in is becoming more or less religious. I believe as this generation gets older, they are becoming more independent and choosing to go down their own paths and have their own beliefs, instead of just following what their family has always done. I've heard of more people being atheist or agnostic in my time here at Boise State than I have in my whole life. I don't think this is necessarily either good or bad. I think it's just a fact of how time is moving forward. I am all for independence and believe people should believe in whatever they want to as long as it is not hurting others. America has come a long way progressively, and I believe we should be free to make our own decisions about how much we want religion incorporated into our own lives. So in that light, I see it as a good thing.
The United States has always had religion deeply ingrained within the fabric of our society. Even our currency has a statement, "In God we trust." There is a large debate in whether religion and religious values should be implemented within business, as we see in companies such as Chick-fil-A. Right now, the Constitution limits the government from getting involved with the church, but it does not state that religion should be removed from government or from business. The Constitution states, "Congress shall make no laws respecting any establishment of religion." Some people believe that religion should not be affiliated with the business models. Still, religion is still a prominent aspect of our lives for many people. As we stated before, only 16% of the population claim to be non-religious. The textbook asks whether I believe religion is increasing or decreasing, and if this is good or bad, or does it matter? According to Pew Research, Christianity is decreasing in the United States, while non-Christian beliefs such as Muslim and Hindu are increasing, as well as unaffiliated beliefs such as agnostic or atheism. I cannot say that this is good or bad. I believe that as long as freedom of religion stands and each party is allowed to freely express their beliefs without criticism or opposition, there is no issue. The truth is, no matter the religious trends, religion is still ingrained within our ethical beliefs. As we have learned, there are ethical principles that have been developed based on religious principles such as Moism, Confucianism, virtue ethics, care ethics, etc. Along with our ethical principles that were established by the melting pot of different religions, there is also cultural expectations or cultural relativism that arise from predominant views of culture. While our culture is becoming less religious, 80% of our population still participates in religion, so it will be a long time before we see change. The case study focuses on how religion and business coexist within our society today, as well as how religion might impact CSR. Businesses have the difficult task in figuring out how to implement their business values in a way that is respectful of their stakeholders. Whether a business chooses to implement religious or anti-religious campaigns within their business model, they need to be aware of all the stakeholders that it may be involved.
In business, it is extremely hard for corporations to ignore something that matters to so many of their stakeholders. When it comes to religion, capitalism, and the corporate social responsibility debate, the most important question is, to what extent is religion and business compatible? Pope Francis has inserted himself into this debate with his first apostolic exhortation and his encyclical on the environment, in which he was critical of what he sees as the exploitative effects of capitalism. Leaders within the Catholic Church are also on record for saying, and I quote, "To misuse men as though they were things in the pursuit of gain, or to value them solely for their physical powers, that is truly shameful and inhumane," end quote. This was said back in 1891 by Pope Leo XIII in his encyclical, The Rights and Duties of Capital and Labor. Business and capitalism have a long-standing overlap, and a good example that the book mentions is the Quakers in the United Kingdom. The Quakers were barred from careers in government, the church, or law, because of their pacifism, they never went into the military. Because of this, they went into commerce. Furthermore, their strong belief in brotherhood and family led to paternalistic employment practices. They even built garden towns for their employees with sport facilities and healthcare access. They firmly believed that cooperation and social provisions were both necessary and natural when it comes to making money for a business. Many people think businesses are entitled to the same religious protections as people are. And this is most likely true because it seems like religious faith is on display in American business today like never before. There are several corporations like Xerox and Ford who sponsor religious spiritual retreats to spark creativity. Also, there are companies who do not have any religious affiliation but are the site of religious meetings. For example, there are a couple church services here around town in Boise that take place at Edwards movie theaters. After analyzing the relationship between capitalism and religion, I was tasked with taking a look at the What Would Jesus Drive campaign. This campaign is a play on the What Would Jesus Do movement in the church that tries to encourage followers to act in a way that Jesus would act. In the What Would Jesus Drive question, this did not arise in the first century Galilee, but Christian groups behind the campaign believes that the answers would not include sport utility vehicles, the fuel-efficient and environmentally unfriendly quote-unquote monsters that rule America's roads. The theme, What Would Jesus Drive, poses a moral dilemma of what's the best vehicle to drive to preserve the earth. A coalition of religious groups, led by Christians and Jews, launched this campaign in Detroit, America's
In 2009, Humanist UK launched a campaign on some of the iconic London buses. The point of this campaign On the other side of this issue, you have companies that embrace their religious beliefs, and it could be potentially strengthening their
Today, it is evident that religion and finance coincides with each other based on how well finance accommodates religion and vice versa. In fact, currently there is a fast growth in the acceptance of faith-based mutual funds, which is proved to support this claim. According to the textbook, faith-based mutual funds work basically through screening out stocks of organizations that breaches the beliefs of a certain religion or religious denomination. To illustrate, a Catholic fund can screen out companies that manufactures contraceptives, and similarly, a Muslim fund will most likely screen out companies that are in pork production industry. However, even with that said, religion and finance don't always smoothly coincide with each other. In fact, usually, according to Chandler, is an act of excessively charging interest. Major religions like the Catholic in its early years and Islam, who still implements this policy until today, have implemented the ban of usury. In this context, we could see the relationship of religion and finance as well as the apparent restrictions that religion takes part of, which also directly impacts the finance industry. Though the acceptance of usury in the modern day of Western finance has been prevalent, the Islamic culture still forbids the idea of usury, also known as the Sharia law. Islam believes that money should only be used as an enabler for businesses and the trade of goods to take place, not just something to generate more money, which equates to greed and evilness. As stated by Chandler in Islamic Finances, paves way for Muslims to participate in modern finance while abiding by their religious principles. And this way is though the development of Sharia-compliant alternatives. The Sharia law roots from profit sharing and leasing or trading that are allowed in Islamic culture because those mentioned components revolve around entrepreneurial work. Instead of just money lending, however, due to financial crisis, where negative impacts of the global recession occurred, and Islamic banks claimed that they didn't fail during the crisis, made others assert that Islam finance is no different from Western finance. Critics suggested that the Islamic finance puts a front in acts of conforming to strict limitations, when in actuality the financial products that are perceived to be Sharia compliant mathematically equates to conventional debt and mortgage contracts, which is no different from accruing excessive interest. Speculations can go on and on about the Islamic finance industry, but coming from a personal perspective, the Islamic culture is known to be greatly dedicated and loyal, making them very strict believers. The scope covering Sharia-compliant investments range from mortgages, bonds, mutual funds, and stocks, which individually abide by different laws through provisions that are associated to each product. In short, each financial product abides by and operates by different laws and legal requirements. This ensures that each financial product conforms with the Sharia law, which makes it hard to believe that accusations being made. Religion and finance hasn't always been accepted together. As stated earlier, in early major religions put a ban on usury, which is the charging of excessive interest. This has always been a problem of how and when is too much interest. This was one of the main reasons for trying to put a ban on usury in the first place. Many religions thought of it as being corrupt because of the main influence of it all was the pursuit of money. The book breaks it down into three purposes behind the pursuit of money. The three purposes are: it must be exchangeable, it must be stable, meaning it must retain value over time, and it must be a measure of worth. Many forms of objects have been used for money over the years, such as tea, salt, cattle, and coins. Though the idea of exchanging goods has been an important part of the Islamic practice, expecting nothing in return has also been a main part of the action as well. Sharia compliant, being that is much like the traditional Western finance, has also some differences as well. Instead of paying interest, they pay every mortgage or loans out through Islamic bonds called sukuk. The reason for this is because it's against the people's good faith to pay interest, so they have to give investors profit from the business that backs a bond. In order for a company to be a Sharia compliant, the company itself cannot manage casinos or sell tobacco, alcohol, pork, or pornography, and the company's debt cannot be more than 30%. Islamic finance can be very strict compared to the Western finance laws and how it is regulated. The main reason for these practices being so strict is because it still follows the same rules and regulations from when it was first developed in the 1960s. Since then, the Islamic finance industry has grown tremendously. Their total assets estimate to almost about $2 trillion. This is a huge factor in why a lot of major companies want to generate and start business within the Islamic finance industry because of the amount of money that is in the market. The Islamic finance industry was originally jump-started with money from the expanding oil countries of the Persian Gulf. This targeted a bunch of Western banks like Citigroup and Goldman Sachs that saw the potential of the market grow from this money increase and started to shift their focus over towards the Muslim countries. In 1983, Malaysian government had passed the Islamic banking law, and they were able to establish the first Islamic loans. This has made Malaysia the world's most important Islamic finance center. With that being said, there are nearly 2.2 billion Christians and 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. That makes up for a large amount of market, especially when religion is a part of some of those people's finances. A lot of major companies and corporations are noticing that the market is constantly shifting. They know that if it can tap into every resource and find out how to use market segmentation to their benefit, they will continue to become more profitable and globally expand their company. After analyzing Islamic finance, I was tasked with answering the following questions on my personal interests of finance. What are my religious and moral concerns about working in the finance industry, and would there possibly be any jobs or industries that I would avoid based on my moral and religious values? For me personally, I have a personal interest of finance. There is always something new you can learn about it, and it can help you out with multiple jobs and issues that you might come across later in life, especially if you're in the business world. I think it's a useful tool to know, and once you can master it down and understand how the market works and changes, you can not only save a lot of money, but make a lot of money as well. I do think there could be some moral concerns when working in the finance industry. I feel like more so nowadays in finance companies, they are more worried about wealth and generating income more than anything else. The world is becoming more and more competitive, and there are some boundaries that are going to be crossed sometimes when working and trying to come out on top, especially in a competitive business like finance. There would be some jobs that I would most likely avoid if I knew that it affected with my religion or morals. For me, my morals are a huge part of who I am as a person, so if I have to go to work every day knowing that I'm going to go against these morals, then I would lose track of who I am and what I stand for as a person.
To conclude, religion plays a key part in today's modern world and in some businesses as well. Christianity dominates the statistics for religion in America, with 3 out of 4 Americans being Christian. Some companies, such as Chick-fil-A, have incorporated religion into their business practice as well as their strategic CSR and have succeeded by doing so. Other companies, such as British Airways, have gotten in trouble for their religion standards. I think religion is becoming less prevalent in America, but it's okay to believe in whatever you want as long as it is not harming others.
Within my section of the presentation, I mentioned how religion is implemented within our society and how it has impacted the ethical beliefs that we use to make decisions today. I also shared my personal beliefs on how religion is diminishing in the United States and how I believe this affects CSR.
When it comes to religion and capitalism, I talked about the church's history and view on capitalism and how it has evolved over time. I also introduced the What Would Jesus Drive campaign and the reaction from car manufacturers related to it. Given Porter's 5 forces, these manufacturers realized a social demand from consumers and an intense competition within the industry to create fuel-efficient vehicles that are less harmful on the environment. To conclude and answer the question, what would Jesus drive? Knowing what we know about Jesus, we think that he would take the bus for multiple reasons.
We talked about the implementation of religious ideology or lack thereof in business and how it affects stakeholders and the capitalistic goals of businesses. Businesses often benefit from their inclusion of personal religious beliefs in their daily practices and must analyze external forces and apply a CSR filter to understand how these decisions will affect their recognized stakeholders.
And finally, we discussed the importance of Islamic finance and the differences that it has compared to the traditional Western finance rules and implementations. Religion and finance haven't always been synced together, but as time has gone on, it has implemented similarities and has been a huge part of a specific target market in the finance industry.